Welcome to the Red Carpet Movie Review.
Today we're going to review Stephen King's It, the mini-series.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from Hollywood, California, welcome to the Red Carpet Review, starring the Showstopper, Shawn Valentino, also starring Rich Twilling, this week's special guest, supermodel Kana Katana. Today we review Stephen King's It, live from the red carpet.
Hey everybody, this is Shawn Valentino, your host on the Red Carpet Movie Review. And today we're going to start a very special series titled Our Favorite Films. And in this series we're going to go back in time and review not only some of our favorite movies, but some films that audiences love to this day. And my broadcast partner Rich Twilling is currently writing a horror novel, and it's only fitting because for the first film in our series we're going to be reviewing Stephen King's classic miniseries, It. Now I'm sure many of you have watched the big screen adaptation of It, which just came out this weekend as we're recording this. But today we're going to take you back in time to 1990, where ABC aired It as a primetime miniseries. And this was a huge success for ABC. It drew enormous ratings, and it really deserved it because this was an absolutely fabulous film. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, It is directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, and it stars an ensemble cast of some of the best TV actors of all time. You have John Ritter here from Three's Company, you have Henry Thomas in the lead role, which many of you know from The Waltons, and you also have Harry Anderson, who was a huge star in the show Night Court. And this being a TV movie, it was only fitting that they got some of the big TV stars of that time period. But similar to the big screen adaptation, the true stars of this film are a fabulous cast of child actors. And you have some big names here as well. You had Jonathan Brandis that plays the lead role. You also have Seth Green in one of his first performances, who obviously went on to become a star as an adult. But really all the child actors here are just absolutely pitch perfect. They do an excellent job of portraying this group called the Losers Club. But of course the true star of this movie in an iconic performance is Tim Curry as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And this is one of the great performances in horror movie history, right up there with Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Curry really brings Pennywise to life here. He is absolutely excellent in the lead role, wonderfully creepy, frightening. This is a character that's going to give you childhood nightmares your whole life. And because Curry's performance works so well, it really keeps your attention the entire 4-hour miniseries. And this movie obviously is an adaptation of a classic Stephen King horror novel. And this is a very difficult novel to bring to big screen because it's over 1,000 pages. And the original plan for this miniseries was to make it a 4-part, 8-hour miniseries that would really flesh out all the characters and take you into a lot of subplots, which they had to end up eliminating because they had to shorten it to a 2-day, 4-hour miniseries. And I kind of wish I got to see the entire 8 hours because I would have loved to have been with these characters for a longer journey, and I would have really enjoyed learning more about their backstories. Now I'm sure many of you have seen the big screen adaptation of It, but this is a completely different take on Stephen King's novel. And I really enjoyed the approach the miniseries took better than the big screen film. And of course the story of It revolves around a group of kids that call themselves the Losers Club, and how they band together one summer to take on this supernatural force of terror called Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And in the story, Pennywise the Clown is an external manifestation of their internal fears. And it comes back to haunt this small town of Derry every 30 years or so. And these kids not only face the challenge of taking on Pennywise, they also face all types of external struggles, such as their parents getting bullied in school, and just a general lack of understanding that this community seems to have towards their problems. So that's what makes this a very relatable tale for everybody, because all of us as children and as teenagers have the problems of adolescence and the perception that adults don't understand us, and there's also all types of fears that come with growing up. And I think that's what makes this novel such a classic, because who understands our internal fears better than Stephen King, the master of horror? And I thought this movie was very masterfully done because it does a great job of showcasing each of these characters, both as children and as adults. And that is the big difference that this movie has from the big screen adaptation, is it introduces these characters as adults and then it presents their childhood in flashbacks. And it showcases that these are all highly successful characters that still are haunted by this one memorable summer where they banded together to take on all of these fears and overcome their struggles. And that's how this movie really works best for me, is it really allows you to connect the dots between how your childhood experiences influences your adulthood lifestyle. And the story of It, at its heart, is a coming-of-age story. And I thought this film did a fabulous job of showcasing the friendship between these kids and how they overcome their demons. But it also works as a nostalgia tale, because when you see these characters as adults, they're not only haunted by these childhood experiences, they also look back fondly at all of these great friendships. And I thought that's where this movie did a really excellent job, is presenting these nostalgic scenes. And my favorite scenes in this movie were when you see the Losers Club reunite as adults. And I thought some of these scenes were just presented fabulously, especially a dinner table scene where you have this group who hasn't seen each other in decades rekindle their old friendship. And I think that's something all of us can relate to, because there's really nothing like the friendships we develop as kids and how those experiences we share together with those friends last a lifetime. And the music, the mood, the atmosphere, and the tension of this movie are just excellent. And it does a really good job of showcasing the small town of Derry, which is almost like a character in itself in this movie. But the general mood and atmosphere of this small town is just chilling, not only because of the clown that's haunting its residents, but even more so because of the adults that turn a blind eye to these children's problems. And that is one of the main themes of Stephen King's novel, is the disconnect between children and adults, and the perception that adults don't really understand the problems of kids. And I think Stephen King, who wrote this book as an adult, has a wonderful connection to his childhood experiences. And not only that, he really has this genius knack of tapping into our own fears and experiences, both as kids and as adults. But none of this would have worked if you didn't have this iconic, amazing performance by Tim Curry as Pennywise, that dancing clown! And again, Curry is just amazing here, from that iconic opening sequence in the sewer. But really throughout the film, he really grabs your attention because he really captures this creepy, frightening nature of Pennywise. And that's exactly what's needed, because again, Pennywise is a symbolic manifestation of everybody's worst fears, particularly that of children. And without his performance, this movie wouldn't work at all. And what I liked about this movie, better than I liked the big screen adaptation, is it isn't as bogged down by special effects and CGI. And this was at a time where you didn't really have that much CGI in movies. So they really were forced to be creative, and they really let Curry's performance and the mannerisms and the dialogue of Pennywise do the haunting. And I really enjoyed the psychological approach that this film took, much better than the computer graphics approach that was taken by the new movie. And throughout this film, you'll see Pennywise pop up in random places to scare these characters. And I thought it worked a lot better than the special effects driven CGI gore fest that we saw in the new movie. Because again, I prefer my scares to be psychological, and I thought this was a very psychologically haunting movie. And I think these types of scares are much better when they're more subtly done. And I don't want to give away any spoilers here, but I wanted to recount some of my favorite scenes in this movie. I already talked about the dinner table sequence, which I thought was just fabulous. Not only is it a nostalgic experience, but I'm sure all of us will remember the fortune cookie scene that is just unforgettable. Some of the other great scenes, of course, are the scene in the sewer that really captures the audience's attention from the very beginning. One of the iconic scenes in any horror novel. It was done really well in the new movie, and it was done almost as well in this movie as well. But I thought some of the creepier, more frightening sequences in this were the more subtle ones. And I thought one performance that was just excellent here was Beverly Marsh's father, who was just this scary looking guy. I mean, if you want to look at the portrait of a child molester, this guy was just cast absolutely perfectly, and he did a really good job, from his awkward movements to the way he spoke. It was just an amazing performance. I thought another funny, hammy performance here was of Beverly Marsh's boyfriend as an adult. And this scene really showcased how our childhood experiences really influence our adulthood, and how she ended up choosing a guy that was more similar to her dad than she would like to admit. And whoever played this character was just hilarious. It was just over the top, really campy, and I thought it was unintentionally funny. as well as another scene later in the movie where Annette, who plays Beverly Marsh, has a soliloquy where she talks about why it is so mean, and it's really, really hilarious. You'll even see it on YouTube because it's specifically called out. One of the more funny scenes I've ever seen in a movie for its bad acting. And I think a lot of the problems that people have with this movie is a lot of people think that the performances of the adults don't match the performances of the kids. But I really disagree with them. There's a couple hammy moments, but I thought that the adults and the kids were just wonderful here. And again, it takes both of them to create this connection and really make this story work, because you have to care about these characters as adults and children for this film to work. And I thought this movie worked really well when it comes to that. And there's not a lot of movies that I can think of that creates this flashback narrative as good, and it's very difficult to hold our attention for a 4-hour span. But I thought this movie really did a good job with that. Unfortunately, where this movie didn't work for me was the ending. And that's been a major problem of Stephen King film adaptations, particularly his miniseries, is the endings just usually don't hold up. We had the same problem in The Langoliers and a couple of his other big screen movies where the ending just gets too hokey, and when it comes to a point where special effects take over, it doesn't really hold up as well as when the scares and the creepy scenes are more subtle. And I thought the final scene was just extremely cheesy, the special effects were awful, and again, for a movie that did such a great job throughout the film of creating these very subtle scares, it really falls apart in this last scene. But I think that's a common problem that most people have with this movie, and that's why it's not as highly regarded as it should be. But issues with the ending and the special effects aside, I thought this was a wonderful movie-going experience. It was one of my favorite movies growing up, and I think it holds up to this day because the themes it presents are absolutely timeless. Growing up, overcoming childhood fears, growing friendships that last a lifetime, nostalgia, the disconnect between parents and children, bully characters that are actually more afraid themselves than they are fearsome. But most of all, it's about a tale of misfits that are bonded together by the fact that they don't fit in, but they use their differences and the fact that they're all outcasts to band together and overcome all of their external and internal fears. So definitely check out this movie. I highly recommend it. It's pretty easy to get a DVD on eBay or Amazon. This one is definitely worth owning because this is a film that you can watch repeatedly because, again, it presents themes that all of us can relate to. And we here at the Red Carpet Movie Review like to rate our movies on a 5-star scale. And I'm going to give it, the miniseries, 4.5 stars on a 5-star scale. This is my favorite Stephen King movie. And I think Stephen King's stories really come to life best because there's so much depth to his writing that you really need the extra time to really flesh out these stories. And I think this movie just does an amazing job of fleshing out and making us really care about all these characters. And when they're overcoming these obstacles, both Pennywise, their parents, the bullies, whatever they are, you really care about them because there's an emotional connection developed with each and every one of them, and you can really feel the emotional connection that they have with each other. And that's why this movie works so well. So definitely go check out it. Not only the miniseries, check out the big screen adaptation because it's a completely alternate take on the same story. Both films do a great job, not only in bringing Stephen King's story to life, but also making each and every one of us ask ourselves, what are we afraid of? And even though we might not know ourselves, it and Pennywise the dancing clown always know our worst fears. Hope you all enjoyed this review, and right now we brought one of our movie experts all the way from Japan. Now what did you think about the red carpet review of Stephen King's It, the miniseries?
Exactly.
Can't argue with that. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to click that like button and press subscribe, and we'll see you next week on the red carpet.
Thank you for watching the Red Carpet Review. Proceed to click that like button and press subscribe for weekly movie reviews past and present. We'll see you soon on the red carpet.